Welcome back to Cosmic Comics. Today I'm going to continue my look at Captain Marvel with the Supremor Saga, and what I think is probably the strangest story arc of the bunch. Much credit needs to be given to editor Stan Lee when it comes to holding this story together with 3 writers across 5 issues following a complex and ever-changing narrative. It's in this storyline that the character of Marvel really begins to feel cosmic. Arnold Drake writes the first issue of this arc beginning in Captain Marvel, Volume 1, issue number 11, published in 1969. Last time we left Marvel, he was standing before a firing squad, facing execution for disobeying a direct order from a superior officer. As the soldiers prepare to fire, the entire execution squad is taken out in a single blast. The Akon have returned once more. They still seek revenge on Marvel for killing off the commanding officer of their trade vessel. A battle Marvel didn't think the Kree should have engaged in the first place. For the second time, Marvel repeats the lie that he was forced to kill the Akon commander. This is simply not true. Amazingly, the only thing that seems to remain of the Kree soldiers is their guns. Marvel happily jumps over and grabs 2 of them and goes to town Duke Nukem style. Marvel then proceeds to kill as many Akon as possible while bemoaning the need for the constant violence. In the end, Marvel decides he needs to survive long enough and keep killing so that in the future he can build a better universe. Aboard the Helion, Jan Rog bemoans the fact that due to the Akon attack against the execution squad, he must now attack the Akon in force or else he will look weak in the eyes of his superiors. He bemoans the situation because he knows it might very well offer Captain Marvel the chance to escape. The Kree rush in to take out the Akon. In the previous issue, Medic Una came down to Earth to warn Captain Marvel that Ronan the Accuser had ordered his execution. Before she ever has a chance to catch up to Marvel, Una is hit by a stray shot. Almost immediately, Marvel is found by her side with Jan Rog behind him. Marvel vows to avenge the wound and blames the situation on Jan Rog. Marvel becomes unhinged, no longer caring about the military command structure, and cuts loose on Jan Rog, landing several punches in a row and taking delight in the pain it brings. Jan Rog shows his training and fights back, coming at Marvel with a kick to the face. While the 2 men trade insults and blows, a still living Una lies on the ground, fading fast. Captain Marvel, in the middle of finishing off Jan Rog with a barrage of attacks and verbal quips, hears Una moan and is brought back to the most important thing of the moment. Marvel flies away carrying Una. As he takes to the skies, Jan Rog offers a bonus to the Kree soldier who shoots Marvel down. Marvel successfully escapes, but soon realizes that he has nowhere to go. He ends up returning to the Cape where he worked. Despite all the crazy attacks recently, the Cape is going to go ahead with a planned rocket launch around the moon. So Marvel, carrying his dying and quickly fading lover, decides the best option is to fly past security and hitch a ride on the rocket. Mind you, I don't think this is a space shuttle, just a rocket. As the stolen rocket leaves the atmosphere, both Carol Danvers and General Bridges are shocked by Marvel's out-of-character actions. He's called thief, robber, renegade, and traitor all in the same panel. Amazingly, the rocket is equipped with medical instruments and a place to work on Una. Unfortunately, there isn't enough time or medical equipment to save her. Just enough for Marvel to monitor her ever-weakening heartbeat. We sit and watch as Marvel listens to Una's heart wind down and stop. Marvel begins to cry and swears to build a shrine to honor Una. Marvel then follows through on his promise. He lands the rocket on a very rocky asteroid not far from Mars where he uses his U-beam to carve out a rock memorial. Marvel then leaves her body exposed in the near vacuum of space for all to see, and we know the exquisite love that once belonged to the 2 of them. Wow, so sweet, so creepy. That being done, Marvel takes off. Marvel isn't in open space long before he's been tracked down by Jan Rog and captured by a magnetic ray. As long as Marvel still has that wrist monitoring device, he shouldn't be hard to find. Instead of pulling him aboard, Yon-Rogg spins his ship around and then uses the tether of their magnetic link to create as much force as possible, and he sends Marvel's ship tumbling into the depths of space at a rate faster than Marvel's ship can compensate for. And thus, Marvel spins through space for months. Even then, he doesn't give in. We're shown Marvel keeping recorded entries for each day. On day 63, we're told he has enough food and water to last another 90 days. But after such an extended period of time alone, Marvel has started to see things. At first, it was seeing stars and planets as toys, but now he sees Una. Briefly, we are shown his parents and told that they both died completing experiments and surpassing the speed of light. Marvel admits that his mind is starting to unravel and that he is no longer certain about what is real and what is not. As he continues his descent into madness, Marvel begins to feel a dark pressure upon him and is warned by the visions that he should not cross the Forbidden Belt. But all of this is most likely nothing more than hallucinations brought forth from Marvel's own mind. As the rocket continues, Marvel notes that even if he did pass a planet, he is moving far too fast to be caught in its gravity. On day 112, Marvel notes that for 3 days, it has appeared that he is approaching a planet, and finally, the ship's instruments register that it is not just a figment of his imagination. He's unsure how such a small planet could be pulling him in, and is convinced that the rocket will burn up upon entry into the atmosphere. The rocket begins to smoke as it enters the planet's atmosphere, but before things get too hot, a ray encapsulates the ship, slowing it down and surrounding it in a thick, viscous matter, which slowly lowers the ship to the ground with care. Marvel is amazed to be saved, but this soon turns to despair once he sees the planet. He wanders out onto the surface and begins to lament and bathe in dark thoughts. The world is shrouded in a misty atmosphere that hides a thick, partially frozen surface, which Marvel finds his feet sinking into. Weak, tired, mentally exhausted, depressed. Marvel questions why he keeps fighting and decides to lay down and give up. Literally 1 second later, the mist shifts and Marvel feels healed, strengthened, refreshed. He sees what he assumes are attractive nurses carrying him tasty food and drink. One of the girls stops to ask if he's curious about how he recovered so quickly or how he was lucky enough to arrive here. Marvel is ever so bold as to say he puts no special significance upon the accidents in life. Dude, look around. Whatever is going on here isn't an accident. She then invites Marvel to follow and have the veil lifted from his eyes. She leads him to giant golden gates reaching nearly to the heavens and tells him that beyond these gates lies all wisdom and all life before disappearing. And then, to Marvel's amazement, the giant doors open before him. Behind the gates is a single structure, a towering obelisk which begins to speak to Marvel and tells him that he was not brought here by chance and disaster alone, but also through wisdom and planning. The voice calls itself Zoe. Marvel wants to know why anything, even a madman, would have caused the tragedies Marvel has had to suffer, but Zoe insists that he should not judge his greatest creation until completion. Marvel, standing before the face of God, has some pretty choice words for him. He wants to know why his misery was such a great creation. Why was the reason for having him branded a traitor by 2 worlds or having his love murdered by his own people? Zoe gives a very godly answer and tells Marvel that he can't be expected to understand the ways of Zoe. Marvel goes on to tell Zoe that any being that thinks it knows all and has control over every being has failed with him personally because he no longer has any purpose in life, and therefore he can't be enticed or enforced into doing Zoe's bidding. Zoe insists that Marvel does have a reason to live. Marvel insists that Zoe is wrong. His love is dead and his birthright stolen. He no longer has a place he can call home, and he has been marked a traitor to his people. Marvel cannot see a way forward. Zoe insists that the greatest motivation burning within Marvel is the desire for revenge. Marvel goes as far as to say that the only life left within him is powered by hatred. Wow, those are some big words for the hero of the story. Marvel offers to serve Zoe in return for the power to destroy Colonel Yon-Rogg. Also, Marvel wants his wrist monitor removed, but complains that nothing can remove it. Zoe states that this complication was foreseen, and then bathes Marvel in light as bright as a supernova. This is followed by a flaming, searing ray that brings bone-deep pain. At the end of the process, a cocky Marvel professes that Zoe has failed because the wrist monitor is still there. Zoe then blows Marvel's mind when he tells him that he gave Marvel the power to destroy it himself. Marvel can't believe what he's hearing. He can't comprehend any being have enough power to smash Daxilium, the strongest alloy known to Kree scientists. Marvel doesn't just have the power to smash it, he shatters the wrist monitor from a solid flex. He's that strong now. Zoe informs Marvel that he has taken away his unibeam because Marvel is now so strong that he no longer needs it. Zoe also lets him know that super strength is only one of many new powers. In order to withstand the pressures of the new superpowers Captain Marvel is given, a new, stronger uniform that can handle things such as teleportation, more strength, and the ability to project fearsome illusions. Not mentioned here, but this seems to be the case. After gaining his power from Zoe, Marvel no longer needs to be taking those breath capsules in order to breathe Earth air. Zoe stresses that once he defeats Yon-Rogg, then Marvel's life and newfound powers belong to Zoe. Marvel agrees and says, "I have no reason to shrink from your demands. Once my debt to Yon-Rogg is paid, I have no further interest in any living thing. I am your servant, Zoe, throughout eternity." Strong words, and words that are sure to come back and haunt our hero. Captain Marvel, issue number 12, opens with a creepy-looking splash page that gives us a quick recap of the deal between Marvel and Zoe. We are then shown Marvel being given all of his new powers. Additionally, Zoe tells Marvel that the blinding energy gives him the powers to conquer time and space. Also, that Marvel now has access to all the knowledge of the universe, since that all rests within Zoe. But if Marvel wants those answers, he has to appear before Zoe in person at the price that any such journey will be filled with incalculable pain. Marvel then takes back off into space on his mission of revenge as a servant of Zoe. On the way, he stops to visit Una and promises to keep returning as long as life remains within him, noting that she is so perfectly preserved by the near vacuum of space that it is almost impossible to realize that she's dead. It's odd that, while using the transportation power that Zoe gave him, Marvel doesn't fly through space when he travels, but instead moves through space as a giant, detached head. The head finds Yon-Rogg's ship, and Marvel notes that he could smash Yon-Rogg right now and be done with the whole matter. But like any good villain, Marvel decides that his arch-nemesis needs a long, drawn-out death. I mean, seriously, Marvel has entered full villain mode. Look at this diatribe against Yon-Rogg that ends in, "Half of my joy shall be watching you crumble into ashes of fear as you view that destruction growing closer, ever closer." At the same time, by not taking care of business right away, Marvel doesn't seem to be living up to his end of the bargain with Zoe. Yon-Rogg seemingly catches a glimpse of the giant Marvel head floating in space. He even claims to have heard his voice. But Yon-Rogg expects Marvel to be dead by now. I would say that this is the first evidence of what Yon-Rogg later claims is a psychic connection born of hate between himself and Marvel. Marvel teleports on by and prepares for his landing. he miscalculates where to show up and arrives in the middle of a militia in Cuba. He has a moment of shock as he realizes that he can't immediately teleport himself once more. It might be due to lack of practice, but either way, within seconds, Marvel has disappeared once more. He reappears within his hotel, but he is outside of his room. He is now capable of holding his body in teleportation mode long enough to avoid hotel clerk Hal Logan as he walks down the hallway. Captain Marvel successfully gets back inside of his room and assumes that his alter ego, Dr. Lawson, wasn't needed at the base after Captain Marvel stole a rocket. Yeah, sure, your alter ego just wasn't needed at work for months. And what do you know, he's shocked to discover in today's paper the headline is "Another Missile Launch," meaning that Dr. Lawson is probably needed at the Cape. At the Cape, the General is telling Carol Danvers that their reports indicate that Marvel couldn't have survived in the stolen missile. But just to be safe, if he ever does return to the base, all the soldiers have orders to shoot to kill. Carol Danvers is more concerned with the security risk Dr. Lawson poses. Lawson has now been absent for months. The General gives Carol permission to move ahead on her suspicions. In the next panel, Carol is on the phone with Cape Security calling in Operation Lawson and ordering the arrest of Dr. Lawson on site. At the same time, in a top-secret lab in the Caribbean, the Black Widow has pinpointed the single greatest threat to U.S. security. Whomever is behind the door is remote controlling a large robot called the Manslayer. At the same time, Dr. Lawson has arrived at the base to report to work, where he is stopped and asked to identify himself. The military police are preparing to arrest Dr. Lawson when they become distracted by a large creature nearby. The Manslayer is attacking Cape Canaveral. It claims to be a being of biochemical and electronic perfection, without emotion or feeble human motivations. It also states that its sole function is to destroy men. So, is this a gender-specific thing? The MPs realize they have bigger things to worry about than taking Dr. Lawson into custody, and Marvel realizes that he needs to create a diversion with his new illusion powers so that he can find a chance to change into Captain Marvel. Marvel distracts attention away from himself by making the guards see a large group of protesters outside of the gates. Meanwhile, Manslayer is having fun bragging about his tech. He's made of self-healing plastic, which is almost impenetrable. Also, Manslayer isn't actually speaking. He's communicating telepathically. The one thing Manslayer hasn't done much of so far is manslayering. But he gets a good start with a karate chop to some guards before seeing the rocket that's about to take off. Because, with all this going on, they are totally going ahead with that rocket launch. Manslayer, for whatever reason, is determined to stop the rocket from launching. Black Widow has made it into the same chamber as the mastermind behind Manslayer. She gets the drop on the villain, but he calls in some plastic henchmen to attack her. Unable or unwilling to pull the trigger, the Black Widow is soon overwhelmed by the plastic men who take her captive while the mysterious villain urges the Manslayer forward. Manslayer is about to destroy the rocket and is so happy about it, but his thunder is stolen as Marvel flies in and exclaims he wants the title Slayer of the Manslayer. Marvel tries to buy himself some time by placing an illusion around the Manslayer, but it does no good as the creature sees right through it. Even with his increased strength, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000 times what it was before, which was already stronger than any human, Marvel is having a hard time against Manslayer. This is yet another Earthling-created super robot which appears to be as tough or tougher than Kree Sentry number 459. I wish the Grand Master would get all of these giant robots together and have them fight each other. Man, that would be so sweet. Marvel goes all out on the Manslayer. Marvel claims he will win because he has emotion, the very thing that Manslayer lacks. Marvel states that his searing need for revenge are flames that the Manslayer cannot smother. ignoring the fact that Marvel already passed up one chance to get that revenge and could leave right now and get it done. He could go and do it. Yeah, nothing's holding him back. Marvel goes in for his mightiest strike, and it does little more than stagger the Manslayer. The beast returns to Marvel with a blow of its own, throwing Marvel back. The Manslayer begins waving Marvel around through the air like a rag doll. No longer content on destroying our great works of science, the Manslayer now wants to destroy one of our living legends, Captain Marvel. The Manslayer sees this victory as symbolic of his overcoming the pride of all mankind. As the Manslayer stands ready to deliver his final blow and kill Captain Marvel, he is left frozen in place. To find out what happened, we switch back over to Black Widow, who has tossed a micro bomb which shattered the Manslayer's energy transmitter. Without a source of energy, he will crumble and die. Black Widow is then hit by her captor with nerve gas so that she might be taken to a more secure location without additional complications. Back at the base, Carol Danvers is convinced that Marvel, the Manslayer, and Dr. Lawson are somehow all tied together, especially when one considers that they all showed up at the Cape around the same time. Marvel thought he could sneak off base as Dr. Lawson, but the NPs have sharp eyes following all the commotion and order him to stop. Marvel, on the other hand, doesn't have time to mess around. He's done playing Dr. Lawson. I mean, seriously, this is it. He's done being Dr. Lawson. He only has one mission now: destroy Yon-Rogg, avenge Una, and serve the great and mighty Zoe. He then teleports away right in front of the two soldiers. The cover of issue 13 lets us know that we haven't seen the last of the Manslayer. This issue switches writers over to Gary Friedrich. It turns out that Marvel only teleported a few miles away to his hotel room, where he is lamenting over his situation once more. Back at the NASA launch pad, two soldiers are standing guard over the Manslayer when one of them sees it move. And this is now the third, self-repairing robot in the pages of Captain Marvel. The Manslayer rises and heads directly towards the moon rocket with the intent to destroy it once more. Marvel, who is packing up in his room and donned a fake beard in hopes of escaping authorities, wonders where he will go next in order to survive long enough to get his revenge. And no, we never see that beard again. Why is he worried about being on the lam when he can teleport anywhere he wants to go? The radio reports a giant robot is once again attacking the Cape, and like a Pavlovian response, Marvel flexes and puts on his uniform. Marvel flies in and finds a machine that is in the midst of an existential crisis. He's running on his reserve power supply and is no longer receiving orders from its master. Suddenly, the machine is asking itself questions such as, why should I destroy the missile? What good will it do me? He seems lonely and in need of direction. The local military force is feeling trigger-happy after seeing so many threats lately and prepares to open fire in an attempt to protect their rocket. Marvel sees this and decides the best way to divert the Manslayer's attention from the soldiers is to attack Manslayer before the soldiers do. Marvel dives in and sucker punches Manslayer. After a couple of punches, Marvel realizes that this is not the same bloodthirsty creature he fought earlier. Well, it wasn't, but Manslayer is willing to attack anything that attacks it first. He goes on the offense against Marvel. After being tossed back, Marvel discovers that the soldiers have now started firing shots at both himself and Manslayer. In the middle of the fight, Marvel decides to teleport out, back to the Kree starship. So, for whatever reason, the force field Yon-Rogg has kept up around the Kree ship has been stopping Marvel from getting aboard, but we haven't been told this until right now. So, maybe this is his first real chance to get his revenge? So at this moment, the Kree ship is docking with a supply ship, which means that there has to be an opening in the field. Within minutes, Marvel has boarded the ship. Shortly thereafter, he dispatches a supply officer and steals his uniform. This gives Marvel access to Yon-Rog's control center. Once there, Marvel finds Yon-Rog by himself watching the transfer of supplies. As Marvel prepares the death's blow, he becomes entranced with Yon-Rog's look of contemplation. Yon-Rog is wondering where Marvel is and what he is doing at that moment. If only he knew Marvel was dead. Yon-Rog claims he could restore Una back to life. Marvel doesn't know that Yon-Rog has the power to revive Una. He changes clothes back into his captain's uniform and walks into the room, announcing that he has come to avenge Una's death. Yon-Rog says Marvel has no right to claim vengeance over Una's death because he had already found a new squeeze, Carol Danvers. Marvel points out that was done in the line of duty, and he refuses to let Yon-Rog hide behind such a transparent excuse. Yon-Rog doesn't go down without a fight. He strikes out, claiming that Marvel should have taken him by surprise. Yon-Rog throws numerous good blows, but every time I read this, I think about how Marvel now has the power of Zoe. He shouldn't even feel these blows, but he ends up winded on the floor at Yon-Rog's feet. What happened to having the strength of 10,000 times what he had before? Yon-Rog blames Marvel for Una's death and for stealing her heart. If she had never met Marvel, then Una might have loved Yon-Rog instead. Yon-Rog doesn't know where to stop and brags that after he kills Marvel, he will use an instrument on the ship to bring Una back to life and make her his wife. Marvel doesn't know if Yon-Rog is crazy or telling the truth, but he needs to get out of there alive if he's ever going to figure it out. And as an important plot point as one might think that this is, it's never brought up again. Never. While Marvel is still dazed, Yon-Rog uses a large view screen to show that Manslayer is closing in on and seemingly about to kill Carol Danvers. Instead of killing Marvel, Yon-Rog leaves him to watch and suffer, but on his way out the door, Marvel pulls a lever, releasing a boom from above, which swings down and seriously injures Colonel Yon-Rog. Once again, Marvel has the opportunity to kill Yon-Rog, but opts to wait for another time. Instead, Marvel chooses to save Carol Danvers. But why is he running when all he needs to do is teleport back to Earth? Oh, it's to get a gun. But Zoe said that he was so powerful now that he wouldn't need a gun. Marvel lets us know that all his powers bestowed upon him by Zoe were not enough to stop the Manslayer, so this time he grabs a lasonic disintegrator before teleporting back to Earth. Marvel arrives a little late. The Manslayer has already grabbed Carol and uses her as a human shield between itself and Marvel. In these thought bubbles, we see that Marvel no longer thinks of Carol Danvers as Miss Danvers. He now thinks of her as Carol. This is a shift from previously insisting on calling her and thinking about her as Miss Danvers. He thinks of his lost love, Una. He then thinks about Carol Danvers giving him those kisses. And Marvel apologizes to Carol for putting her in danger, but he has to take the shot or hundreds of people might die. Crazily, Carol, on the other hand, is super happy to hear that Marvel actually cares about her. Marvel misses with his first shot because the robot is so fast. He turns his gun up to full power. Carol is scared but recognizes that she can't show it, and her trust in Captain Marvel outweighs that fear. Marvel successfully hits Manslayer's energy supply cable, but Carol is hit by the feedback. The robot stands silent, and Carol appears to be uninjured. Carol hugs Marvel and thanks him for saving her life once again. Carol lets Marvel know that he's wanted for treason, but she can't have him arrested right after saving her life. Captain Marvel issue 14 picks up right after the battle against Manslayer. Marvel feels he has done more than enough to prove that he is not a traitor, but Carol wants him to prove his innocence at a trial. The military wants Carol Danvers to stand down so they can open fire. Carol continues her attempt to talk Captain Marvel into standing down and facing trial, while Marvel juggles between his feelings for Carol and the desire to teleport away. Unfortunately, this issue of Captain Marvel ties into the end of a 3-part story arc concerning the Avengers and the Puppet Master. Puppet Master forces Iron Man to attack Captain Marvel at the Cape. Both Captain Marvel and Carol Danvers recognize that something is wrong with Iron Man and that he is speaking as if in a trance. The two heroes duke it out. Early in the battle, Carol is hurt by a blast from Iron Man's repulsor rays. As the battle rages on, an ambulance is called in and she's removed from the ruckus. Marvel is finding Iron Man difficult to defeat despite Zoe's added strength. Once more, Captain Marvel must depend on the might of his lasonic disintegrator instead of Zoe's power to overcome his foe. He gets a shot off on Iron Man at near point-blank range. Fortunately for Tony Stark, the gun was set far below its maximum intensity. Captain Marvel attempts to kill Iron Man, but his gun has become jammed by his efforts to increase its firing power. The Puppet Master is overjoyed at this turn of events. We finally learn his plan. He wants to use Iron Man to destroy NASA's base at the Cape in order to protect his co-conspirator Egghead's space station, which they are going to use to take over the United States. Wow, that plan sounds really complicated. Iron Man and Captain Marvel continue beating on one another until at last Iron Man falls. This 4-panel sequence is very close to the Lost meme and decades ahead of its time. Back at his base, the Puppet Master is flipping out that Iron Man is no longer following his commands. He continues to attempt to force Iron Man to do his bidding while inside the suit. Tony Stark has had a heart attack and can't understand why his body continues to try to rise and kill Captain Marvel. An ambulance is called in and Iron Man is carted off the field of battle. The next page then sweeps everything under the rug. Marvel teleports away, while Iron Man wakes up inside of the ambulance and decides to release himself from medical care by making a quick exit. Marvel is transporting himself through space while thinking a million thoughts about the past and reflecting on his life. Suddenly he slows down and stops at the appearance of a lifeless asteroid as he realizes that he's been fleeing with no direction. While here, Marvel searches for answers within his soul and calls out to the empty void of space and asks why he's here and where is he going? Unlike most of us, Marvel hears a voice that answers back. A voice which insists that it has very important plans for Marvel. A voice that claims Marvel owes it for his very being. Zoe is mad. And I will now read Zoe's command in full.
I gave you vast powers in order that you might feign revenge on yon Rog, in return for which you would serve me forever. Unfortunately, you have used the powers granted you foolishly, and my patience has expired. Therefore, I now command that you fulfill your end of the bargain, and do as I say. You will now return to your home planet in the Kree galaxy. On your arrival there, you will have a short period of time in which you may do as you wish, but when I am ready, you will perform the duties I designate. Now, teleport yourself there immediately and wait for my next contact. So commands Zoe.
Zoe is tired of Marvel fooling around, dodging his commitments, and generally forgetting about Zoe the more and more he's been away. Afterwards, Marvel is immediately teleported to his home galaxy, seat of the Kree Empire, where he is told by Zoe that the days ahead hold a balance between life and death. We pick up where we left off in Captain Marvel, Volume 1, Issue number 15. Written by Gary Friedrich. Marvel agrees to do as Zoe commands, but first he wants to know more about his master. He points out that Zoe has appeared as both a motionless pinnacle, and now he appears as an unidentifiable suborganic globule suspended in space. That is so oddly specific. Marvel wants Zoe to prove to him that the being he is about to serve is indeed a supreme being. I don't think that's how it works. You don't get to make the deal with the devil, use the powers for a while to save your Earth Crush, and then decide you don't want anything to do with the bargain anymore. Luckily, Zoe doesn't back down and commands Marvel to look deep within its essence. When Marvel looks, he is shown the entire history of the Earth, including the Earth's future. Marvel is then asked to look into Zoe once more, but this time he is commanded to search out the fate of Captain Marvel. Here, Captain Marvel sees himself planting a bomb within the Kree galaxy. Marvel sees his future, but cannot believe it to be true. Marvel can't believe he would destroy his own planet and accuses Zoe of trickery. Zoe insists that what Marvel witnessed is destined to occur because Zoe willed it to be so. Zoe then expands outward, encompassing and enveloping everything that is. The horizon then explodes in a blazing inferno of blinding colors and meaningless spheres floating around the mass of Zoe. Meanwhile, Marvel is drawn into a vortex without time or dimension, where mind and matter are without meaning, and where blindness would be a blessing. This feast of the senses continues, and we are told that Marvel can't begin to comprehend the mighty mind of Zoe, and must thus concern himself only with his own survival, instead of basking before the mastery of such a superior mind. While going through all this, we are shown a Marvel who attempts to process what is happening. Is it possible that Zoe is a member of a super advanced civilization? Marvel says no. Zoe is more than that and must be some form of supreme being. So, if Zoe is a supreme being, then why has Zoe chosen to put Marvel through all this? Perhaps Zoe wants to destroy Marvel, but if that were the case, Zoe would have done so immediately, but instead Zoe chose to show off the scope of his powers. Marvel deduces that Zoe must need Marvel for something, and that there must be some force on Marvel's home planet that is beyond the power of Zoe. Marvel then decides to continue to pretend to be in the service of Zoe, so he can figure out why one as powerful as Zoe needs the help of a mere mortal. Shortly thereafter, a beautiful girl steps out from behind a blinding light. Marvel then finds himself suspended above a utopian garden. He interprets Zoe's message to mean that only one as powerful as Zoe could command all things between heaven and hell. Zoe then transports Marvel to hell, where, but for a fraction of a second, Marvel becomes aware of all the reasons why men fear death. He is then transported back to his lonely asteroid, where Zoe asks if that was enough of an example of his endless might and power. Marvel indicates that he is more than impressed with Zoe's show of force. Once again, Zoe asks Marvel to gaze upon him, and he shows Marvel a map of his home planet, Kree, capital of the Kree galaxy, most populated Kree world, and considered cradle of the Kree civilization. Zoe informs Marvel that the entire planet needs to be destroyed. Marvel then asks that he be killed rather than be given this task, and insists that he could never pull off such a task by himself. Additionally, he wants to know why Zoe would want to destroy what Marvel considers to be the greatest civilization in the universe. He goes as far to insist that through their wonders, really, the Kree, above all other civilizations, they're the ones that deserve to live. In a truly godly fashion, Zoe informs Marvel that it is not the place of mortals to question their gods. and Zoe insists that his reasons are just. Zoe insists that Marvel turn his eyes towards Tambor, pagan god of the Kree Lar's frozen wastelands. Zoe insists that what appears to be a harmless idol is in truth a menace that threatens life on all planets. Zoe tells Marvel that the idol is the greatest magnetic storehouse ever devised and has the potential to eventually pull every existing planet out of orbit. Marvel asks if, by destroying the source of the magnetic power, if that would spare his home planet. Zoe says, no, because the source of the magnetic power is the heart of the planet. Zoe then insists that the Kree already have the rest of the answers Marvel seeks and disappears, leaving the fate of the universe in Marvel's hands. Marvel still can't figure out why Zoe would give this task to him instead of taking care of it himself, but he doesn't have much time to think on the matter and teleports home where he hopes he can prove Zoe wrong and discover a way to save the planet. And once again, we get another great full-page spread in this issue. Here we find Marvel back on Kree Lar, overlooking Rad Nam, the city of his birth. Marvel isn't given long to gawk as the Accuser Patrol quickly picks out the fugitive. Marvel wants to avoid a trial, but before he can escape, he is taken down by a stun ray, and we learn that Ronan has commanded that Marvel be taken alive. Marvel is conscious, but his head hasn't cleared enough to teleport, and thus he is forced into captivity. Once aboard the small craft, Marvel starts a brawl and quickly dispatches of everybody except the senior officer inside the control cabin. The senior officer is surprised to discover that his entire crew has been defeated and that their prisoner has now entered the cabin. Marvel then takes over the ship at gunpoint and informs the commander that they are on their way to see the pagan idol Tambor. The commander calls him mad and thinks that Marvel might be a worshipper of Tambor, and then suddenly in the sky appears a warship of Tambor. At first, the commander thinks the other ship is attempting to ram them, but then it begins to open up and becomes clear that the Tambor warship is going to swallow the smaller craft. The commander insists that all loyal Kree are sworn to fight the Tambor, which is an interesting tidbit. Marvel insists that they be allowed to be captured and knocks the commander out. In the final panel of the issue, Marvel appears to be surrendering in hopes that the worshippers will take them back to their headquarters. Thus we reach the final issue of this arc, Captain Marvel, Volume 1, Issue number 16, the final leg of the Supremor Saga, written by Archie Goodwin. Mind you that this issue represents only the second appearance of the Supreme Intelligence. In fact, the cover, keeping in tradition with the first appearance, refers to the Kree leader as the Intelligence Supreme. The opening splash shows Marvel being taken before Tambor, the living idol. These are the first words his captors have spoken to him, and Marvel is surprised that they already know about his plan to destroy Tambor. The worshippers prove that they have a high degree of confidence by letting Marvel go. At this point in time, Marvel starts getting drawn towards the idol by the metal alloys in his battlesuit. He notes that the worshippers must not be wearing any metal. Marvel attempts to use his teleportational power, but discovers that the magnetic pull is too strong. Marvel spies an entrance near the idol's base and uses short bursts of his jets to maneuver himself in that direction. He's coming in so fast that he's forced to burst through the door in his approach. Once inside, Marvel's greatest fears are realized. Inside the idol is no alien plot of supernatural occurrence. Instead, Marvel discovers a recently built machine of Kree design and construction built to increase the strength of the planet's magnetic poles 1,000-fold. Marvel is at a loss as to who would have built such a machine to destroy their own star system. All the same, he's ready to destroy the machine's power source when an off-panel voice calls Marvel a traitor. Appearing before Marvel, and now, in the correct color, is a blue-skinned Ronan the Accuser. Ronan reminds Marvel that his treason so far has gone unpunished and promises to finish handing out his sentence here and now. Marvel claims he serves another, and attempts to warn Ronan about the need to save the Kree star system. Marvel continues his warnings, but Ronan refuses to listen to a traitor. Marvel uses his jets to move himself around Tambor's main column and get away from the ray of the universal weapon. Ronan starts firing wild shots at Marvel, and one manages to strike our hero and drain all the power from his belt. Marvel makes a hard, fast trip to the floor. Ronan readies his hand for the final strike, and Marvel once again pleads that Ronan first needs to destroy the machines around them, but Ronan insists he must do nothing but execute Mar-Vell. Marvel, fighting against the universal weapon, removes his battle helmet and tosses it towards the generator. He's hoping that the helmet's auto-destruct mechanism is enough to finish the job. The helmet does its job. The blast from the helmet begins a chain reaction that spreads from generator to generator, and forcing the almighty Tambor to fall. After the collapse of Tambor, we discover that Marvel and Ronan live due to a protective energy shield created by the universal weapon. Ronan notes that Marvel is still alive and breathing heavy, and that these breaths will be his last. By strange coincidence, it is at that moment that Carol Danvers sits up in her hospital bed, insistent that she needs to help Captain Marvel, as she is the only one who believes he isn't a traitor. On her way out of the hospital, Carol barely misses an encounter with the FBI, who've arrived to talk to her. Once outside, Carol is confronted with a sea of reporters and cameramen looking to finish their story. As Carol runs from the reporters, a mysterious car pulls up and tells her to get inside. Carol hesitates, but Colonel Jan Rogg pulls her into the vehicle while telling her that they have a common acquaintance, Captain Marvel. Meanwhile, Captain Marvel calls Ronan out for enjoying his work a little too much, while Ronan insists that he will indeed enjoy Marvel's death because it will launch a new era for the Kree. Instead of striking Marvel, Ronan's blast hits the Super Sentry. The what? He shows up with orders from the Supreme Intelligence telling Ronan to surrender his weapon and that he is stripped of all power. Marvel, still laid out on the floor from his fall, had thought that the Super Sentry was nothing more than a legend or fairy tale for kids. The Super Sentry is an invincible, master version of the Kree's intergalactic guardians, and it is called upon by the Supreme Intelligence only when the Empire is threatened. Ronan continues his attack, refusing to back down before the mechanical monstrosity, but Ronan is no match for the Super Sentry. Ronan vanishes from the backlash of his own bolt. Marvel can't understand how he personally fits into anything that is going on and is told to be silent by the Super Sentry, who says that Marvel may get answers in the Hall of Judgment. As the Super Sentry transports both of them there, Marvel reflects that the Hall of Judgment is reserved for those who commit the highest of offenses. He wonders if his alliance with Zoe or his sympathies with Earth have brought about this moment in time. As the Super Sentry approaches the planet, he passes through the artificial rings of the defense mines and subsonic crystals towards the Hall of Judgment, where inside awaits the Supreme Intelligence. Remember that this is only a second appearance, and boy does this page stand out. There's the Super Sentry there, and then there's this giant green Medusa-looking head, the tubes of bodies lining the wall. This is a moment where you feel like, alright, like maybe the Kree really are truly an alien race. So, what is the Supreme Intelligence? Marvel tells us that he is made up of the most fantastic Kree minds from thousands of centuries, preserved forever as one collected will, able to project any form, any thought on the gigantic mentaloplates, able to formulate any plan, any policy, and have it carried out by the Imperial Minister. This is the leader of the Kree Empire. The Supreme Intelligence calms Marvel's fears by letting him know that he is not here to be judged. Marvel was merely a pawn of the real villain, Zarek, the Imperial Minister. now referred to as Zarek, the Supreme Traitor. The Supreme Intelligence reveals that Zarek is known by at least one more name, Zoe. The experience of standing before Zoe and the seemingly endless voyage through space were all part of a carefully crafted scheme in order to trick Marvel. Technology that had been outlawed for thousands of years, a vast, multi-sensory illusion chamber, was used to create a false world. At the controls of that chamber were the second and third highest ranking members of the Kree Empire, Ronan the Accuser and Zarek the Imperial Minister. We're told that it was these two that decided to make Colonel Yon-Rogg Marvel's commanding officer, knowing that Yon-Rogg's insane jealousy would eventually force Marvel to disobey a direct order and thus play into their hands. Marvel starts throwing a tantrum and wants to know why they did this, when all it seemed to do was brand Marvel as a traitor and cost him the life of his love, Una. We are pretty much back to the same questions that Marvel previously had for Zoe. Zarek matches Marvel's outburst with one of his own. He tells Marvel he was looking for a tool he could use to topple the Empire. He needed an outlaw soldier to take the blame for Tambor. Ronan and Zarek were going to use Marvel as their patsy. The two of them would be the good cop heroes, stopping the outlaw soldier who was going to attack the Kree people with an ancient pagan god. When Ronan and Zarek stopped Captain Marvel, they would both become national heroes. And then it all comes out. What this is really about. The ugly specter of racism. Zarek is a blue Kree, one of the few original purebloods who is native to Hala. Ever since the Kree started the Galactic Empire, they have assimilated endless worlds into their empire and added impure races to their bloodlines at every step along the way. Zarek and Ronan feel the original blue-skinned Kree have been absorbed almost to the point of extinction, and this has been made possible due to the liberal policies of the Supreme Intelligence. Zarek saw it as his duty to end those policies. Ronan, following his defeat by the Fantastic Four, was humiliated. Link up above to where I covered that story arc in the corner. Ronan was unsatisfied with the decision to keep Earth simply under observation, and he wanted to see it destroyed. The best way he had come up with to make this happen is to ensure that the observation mission that was going on was a failure, and his plan was to then have the Earth mission turn a Kree hero into a traitor to his people, a traitor that would then return to destroy Hala following the orders of a false god. Ronan would then kill Marvel and then blame the menace of Tambor on him as well. The lax policies of the Supreme Intelligence towards integration would be blamed. Zarek would then take credit for uncovering the plot that the Supreme Intelligence missed. Zarek believes that this would have been enough political momentum to carry himself and Ronan into ruling the Empire. Why is Zarek revealing all this? Turns out he's talking so much to shield his mind from thinking about the rescue he has planned. The Supreme Intelligence insists that even with his mind blocked, that Zarek couldn't hide his plotting from him. And at that moment, off-panel, someone shouts about a negatron sphere with enough radiation to blow up the Hall of Judgment. This next set of thought bubbles should have been attached to Ronan instead of Zarek, but whatever. The negatron sphere came from Ronan. Ronan then extends his universal weapon outward for Zarek to grasp, and the two of them use the weapon to flee along Kree teleportation lanes while hiding behind a protective aura. As Ronan leaves, we get even more speech bubbles attached to the wrong character. Ronan is speaking, but the words are attached to the Super Sentry. Basically, Ronan is bragging that he keeps getting away thanks to the powers granted to him by the Supreme Intelligence. While the villains flee, Marvel is attempting to ensure the traitors don't win. He must protect the Supreme Intelligence. With no other options available, Marvel tosses his body atop the negatron sphere and waits for a death that does not come. The sphere explodes, but somehow Marvel lives. Afterwards, the Supreme Intelligence offers to reward Mar-Vell, telling him that he is wise and the greatest of all Kree warriors, and Mar-Vell never could have known that this chamber is capable of neutralizing even the most advanced weapons. Additionally, Zarek and Ronan are both already in custody, having been apprehended by Kree guardsmen. The only guilty party still on the loose is Colonel Yon-Rogg. The Supreme Intelligence lets Mar-Vell know that he cannot spare sending an armada to capture him at this time, but that the Colonel could be killed with a hyperspace bolt. Mar-Vell is alarmed by this choice, as such drastic measures might very well destroy the Earth. The Supreme Intelligence is unhappy that Mar-Vell is chosen to question him, and lets him know that the death of a true traitor is far more important than a backwater planet. But Mar-Vell insists that he could personally deal with Yon-Rogg without destroying the planet. In fact, he goes as far as to insist that this request be fulfilled as his promised reward. The Supreme Intelligence is surprised to hear that Mar-Vell does indeed care for the Earth so much and reluctantly grants Mar-Vell his request, but Mar-Vell must undergo a change. When the transformation is complete, Mar-Vell's uniform and battle helmet have been transmuted into something new. Mar-Vell is told that he can no longer wear the garb of an ordinary Kree soldier because he has been personally honored by the Supreme Intelligence. On the other hand, Mar-Vell's sympathies towards Earth make it impossible for the Supreme Intelligence to ever allow Mar-Vell to advance beyond his current rank. Therefore, for the rest of his life, he shall be Captain Mar-Vell. Bam! And just like that, we finally arrive at the costume that comes to mind when I think most of us think about Captain Mar-Vell, along with getting a great reason for why he retains the captain portion of his name. With all that out of the way, the Supreme Intelligence dismisses Mar-Vell, but not before noting that Mar-Vell's glory will likely be tainted by tragedy. As Mar-Vell leaves, he has to wonder if Zoe was an illusion. Will he still have the powers given to him by Zoe? And surprisingly, he does. This raises all sorts of questions about where and how Mar-Vell got these new powers. Mar-Vell himself states that Zarek must have used him as a test subject for an untried process, and although I could be wrong, I don't think the source of his powers are ever questioned again. Strange. As Mar-Vell flies through space, something begins to happen to him. He's overcome by a strange feeling. The same feeling he had at the moment that the Negatron sphere exploded. Mar-Vell begins to slowly fade from existence. He's sliding from our reality and into that of the negative zone. This effectively wraps up the Supremor Saga portion of Captain Mar-Vell's life. Even though Medic Una is no longer in Mar-Vell's life, the comic begins to shift away from the character of Carol Danvers. In fact, moving forward, we mostly leave the characters from Cape Canaveral behind. Throughout this portion of Captain Mar-Vell Volume 1, we see Mar-Vell shift from decorated soldier observing distant planets to Kree outcast bent on revenge. Mar-Vell is untethered and ready to take to the stars and find Yon-Rogg to get his revenge. But once he's out of the negative zone, we find he's more earthbound than ever. Moving forward is perhaps my least favorite period of Captain Mar-Vell, the Rick Jones era. This era proved so unpopular that the Captain Mar-Vell comic was temporarily shelved for a couple of years, with the last issue asking their fans to write in and tell them where Mar-Vell should go next. Captain Mar-Vell gets back on everybody's good side when he is reintroduced as one of the main characters in the Kree-Skrull War, which I'll be discussing soon. Thanks for watching. Feel free to hit any of the buttons below, or check out my other channel, Cosmic Peppers, where I discuss pepper history and do pod reviews. I'm out.